Welcome back, guys. It's another week of me being a self-employed car dealer, and the 5.3 is still kicking my butt. It's finally coming along. Like, it's basically 1 or 2 days away from being done. If I had like a full day to dedicate to this, it would have been finished today. And by finished, I mean the engine would be put back together and all of our wiring and everything will be plugged in. That's basically all we're waiting for now. As you can see, the heads are on. We're just waiting to do the valve covers and then obviously the rockers and push rods and intakes, stuff like that. So just little things left at this point. Luckily, I managed to get the heads on yesterday. Everything's torqued down. So just, yeah, it's coming along, but pretty slowly, and it just takes up so much of my time. And it's not easy work because I have to be bent over or, you know, in this almost fetal position on top of our front end here. And it's just really uncomfortable to work on, very taxing on the body. And yeah, it's not pleasant. But even when I put this back together, I can't start it because our ECU currently still has the AFM programmed in it. And obviously, with us having replaced the camshaft and lifters, the ECU needs to be aware of that and not try to turn off cylinders, which is why I've sent our ECU out. There's a few companies on eBay that do this service. They delete the AFM from the ECU. Not sure how they plug it in or do something inside, whatever it is. It costs about $100 to get that done. So I have shipped out my ECU just this morning, and hopefully we're gonna have the ECU back in a few days and be able to actually test this engine out and just test my engine assembly skills, which there are none. Obviously, there's going to be plenty of other work to do on this truck after, but for now, I just want to make sure that the engine is going to run, and this thing should drive pretty well after this. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Now, sort of an unfamiliar sight, a Camry on a lift. What could it possibly need doing? Well, this is kind of disappointing. So the issue this car was having is traction control lights and ABS lights. And after reading the codes, we found out that the vehicle speed sensor, so not one of the sensors that are in our wheels or you know, bearing assemblies, not the ABS sensors, but the actual vehicle speed sensor that's normally inside the transmission or like on the outside of the transmission, that is malfunctioning. I clear the codes and right away that code comes back without even driving the car. So I'm guessing some sort of a internal short, maybe some sort of a failed sensor situation. Normally it would be easy enough. Most cars you can just unbolt one bolt and the sensor pops out from the bell housing somewhere. But not on this transmission, not in this Camry. On this Camry, you have to fully remove the valve body from the transmission to access the sensor that lives, well, actually two sensors that live right over here. One of them is the input shaft speed sensor and the other one is the output shaft sensor. Absolutely ridiculous that you do have to drop your valve body to change a couple of little sensors. But long story short, we got it done. We were waiting for the part to come in today, and after that, this can go right in there, hopefully not have any issues with the transmission. On something like a Camry that's supposed to be super reliable and super easy to work on, this was disappointing. Now, I have some good news for some of the motorcycle viewers, motorcycle fans. We have a second speed triple. You guys remember this guy? Still no updates, still not sure why it's not getting spark or fuel, but I bought another one with crash damages. It's got some dents on the tank, it's got a hole in the oil pan, it's got a missing cluster. So the latter two are the main reason why I haven't started it yet, because it cannot start with no cluster attached, because they just basically the ECU doesn't respond to the key if there's no cluster. And obviously a hole in the pan means we have no oil in the engine and we can't really start it. Luckily, I knew exactly what I'm getting into because this painter's tape was on this on Copart's pictures. So I'm assuming the previous owner, after crashed it, kind of just added some notes on what to expect from the auction when you buy this. To a lot of people, this is pretty concerning, but you know, a hole in the oil pan isn't really that big of a deal. The oil pan was $85, already ordered, waiting for it to get delivered. Broken radiator or a radiator hose. And then it doesn't start without cluster. Clusters are expensive. I spent about $300 something on one, but that's also on the way. So once we have those two items, we'll be able to start it, hopefully, and see if it's worth fixing everything else. So another speed triple, super exciting. I kind of bought it because, well, first of all, I love speed triples. Secondly, my other speed triple doesn't want to start a run. seemed like a reasonable choice. Regardless, I mean, it's gonna be winter, so I'll probably have time to work on the other one and maybe figure something out with that. But until then, at least I'll be able to get a couple of rides in our older 2008 Speed Triple. Next update is the red Traverse. Basically did no work on this. It was my friend Eli who worked on this, as I mentioned in the previous video. The front end has been fully assembled. The bumper had been painted. That was from a junkyard. The paint matching is decent, not perfect, but good enough. So this is about to go on sale once we clean up the interior and make this nice and pretty. Volvo did get two Priuses, both of which have some front end damages, both of which will be getting repaired. Not really much to say about these. These cars are absolute sellers. As much as I hate seeing these things here, as much as I hate looking at them, they sell for really good money and they sell very quickly. The last Prius we had sold within a day, and we kind of got optimistic with the pricing, and it still sold for the asking price and had a lot of interest. Being in this business, we have to deal with cars that we cannot stand, but it is what it is. Now, I made a couple of purchases this week. I bought two Civics. This is one of them. This is a 2008, and the other is a 2018 Civic Sport with significant front end damages from hitting a deer, but it is a manual, and that makes it kind of interesting. So I'm looking forward to getting that. It just hasn't been delivered yet, but should be here any day. This guy got it for a $500 bid, so incredibly good price. Lucky purchase, and this should sell for about $5,000, and all it needs is a hood and fender, both of which have already been picked up at a junkyard and brought to Zach, our painter, who is going to paint them, and then we're going to put them on and, you know, wash, clean, and this car is gone for sale. No changes with the Subaru TT or the SQ5. The Tiguan, well, I have some good news. We have another Tiguan. This is going to be the engine donor for our blown 2009. This here is a 2015, so it has a slightly revised engine that has a lot less of the common issues that were found on the previous generation EA888 engine that's in that. To anyone who's not familiar, basically this engine, the 2.0T from the early 2010s or even 2009, is just a really problematic engine. Between bad piston rings and bad chain tensioners and bad timing chain, it blows a lot and very frequently. So that's exactly what we're dealing with here, a seized engine that is completely toast. But this guy should be a perfect engine donor. It's going to be a newer engine with less miles on a car that has a junk title, so we got this for $1,000, and hopefully we can pull a motor out of this, throw it into that, and that'll be a good running and driving car that can sell for about $5,000. Next, the Tucson. So this thing I haven't really touched yet, but I did order the new door handle as well as the steering cover. So once those get installed, and the only reason why they haven't is because the door handle does need to be painted first. Once we have those issues fixed, I'm going to try and take this to the dealer and see if they will give us the engine warranty replacement, because this engine is knocking, most likely due to the bad rod bearings in these engines. So hoping that this will be covered under warranty despite the salvage title. Just worth a shot. Before I start, you know, digging into the engine and changing rod bearings or fully replacing the engine, I should probably see whether or not Kia or Hyundai sticks to their lifetime engine warranty and replaces our engine for free. That would be really nice. Now, on to less good news. You guys remember this thing? So in the last 2 weeks, this guy sold. This Traverse had sold to a great buyer relatively nearby, and he gave me a call back recently and said that the rear end is making noise. So we're thinking the rear differential is having issues. And even though he's already put over 1,000 miles on this car drives perfectly fine until you start doing like really sharp turns. You do start getting some clicking in the rear end, and seems like it's a differential. We're gonna replace the rear diff for free for him, hoping to find this at a junkyard, because a new diff is obviously going to be really expensive for this and not really worth doing. But there's a lot of these Traverses at the junkyard, so I believe we should be able to get the rear diff for a couple $100, and as soon as one of the lifts is available again, this thing is going to go in there and get a new differential. Now, a few of you guys in my previous videos have said that, you know, as a sales, like I shouldn't really be fixing these cars for people after purchase, but I do my best to take care of my customers. I do my best to preserve a good reputation, and I think this is the right thing to do. I really don't want to, you know, give people bad cars that break down very shortly. And even though I don't offer an official warranty, I always tell my customers I will take care of you if something happens shortly after purchase, and that's exactly what we're dealing with here. So as much as I don't want to have to fix a car that I had already sold and not make any profit on that, I prefer to do that because I think that's just worth doing as a businessman, as somebody who values his reputation in this industry. While we're on the topic of Traverses, the white one is all set. Within the last few days, this thing went for sale, fixed the entire front end, replaced it with the parts from a junkyard, and it looks perfectly okay. Pretty solid $5,000 car. One issue I did find on this is the fact that the speakers do not work. So all of the speakers, apart from the two front ones in the A-pillars, like that little guy over there and one on this side, these are the only two speakers that work, meaning that when you do have radio going, I mean, it sounds absolutely awful because all of the other speakers are not doing their job. Unfortunately, not something I really want to dig into. Seems like a really unpleasant thing to work on, electrical issues, tracking down bad connections and anything like that. So it is what it is. We'll see. I'll drop the price accordingly if I need to, and worst case, I will fix the speaker issue if it comes to that. But I generally believe that for around $5,000, an all-wheel drive 3-row SUV, even with bad speakers, should sell. I mean, it's got maybe 110, 120,000 miles, and it's in decent shape. Has good tires, decent brakes, doesn't really need anything, drives perfectly well. So it's possible that sooner or later a buyer will show up who doesn't really care about listening to music, or who's just gonna throw a little Bluetooth speaker in the car and just use that for their stereo system. We did have a sale. We sold the Q5. Finally, after having it for 3 months, it finally sold, and we did make $4,000 on that car, which is great. Obviously, we got it for really cheap. It needed very little work, and I had it priced quite low. Sold it for $7,800, which is a really good price for that car. I mean, considering the fact that the SQ5s that have the exact same drivetrain sell for $13,000, $14,000, this Q5 is literally the same thing, just without the fancy seats or steering wheel. At that price point, I think extremely worth it. So finally it sold, finally found the right buyer, and yeah, made some profit. So right here is the price list for this car. We bought it for $2,350. With fees and delivery, we spent $2,900, and then just in parts and oil change, we spent $320 on that. Having sold it for $7,800, we made $4,600, which is one of the best profit margins I have had so far. And considering that this was for very little work, I'm more than happy with how that car worked out, and would love to buy another one, even though it took 3 months to sell. Then we can look at the red Chevy Traverse that's about to go for sale. We spent $5,000 on that, and based on the current market, it should sell for $7,500. So $2,000 in profit margin. Again, not really something I personally spent a lot of time on. It was all Eli, who is getting paid from this, and considering that as an expense, we are still making $2,000, which is perfect. That's kind of what I need to focus on, is hiring other people to do things, because I'm running out of hands and time, and I can't really make enough of a profit if I do that. Plus, this gives me an opportunity to work on more interesting projects, like the Silverado, which honestly, at this point isn't very interesting. At this point, I just want to finish it because it has been the bane of my existence for, I mean, definitely the last week since I've been working on it, but probably ever since I bought it like half a year ago. As soon as the Silverado is done, we're going to be working on changing the differential on the Traverse, and then once that is done, we're going to be changing the engine on the Tiguan. So that's another pretty time-consuming project, but it is what it is. I mean, I bought that Tiguan for $1,000. Bought the second Tiguan for $1,000, so two $1,000 cars are gonna make one about $5,000 car. Assuming there's no complications along the way, because obviously we don't even know if it's gonna need any other issues. For all we know, it could have a bad transmission as well as a bad engine, but you know, that's pretty unlikely. I know this has been a pretty common format lately for my channel, which is uncommon, but with how much time I'm spending on the Silverado, I just really do not have time to finish up our dedicated one-car projects and make videos about that. So we kind of have to blend in a little mix of everything because I just simply do not have a choice. It's either this or no videos. a lot of you guys say that you kind of enjoy the updates on all of the projects and just my day-to-day operations, so I just do that, and hopefully you guys are okay with that. There will be dedicated videos on the Silverado, there will be a dedicated video on the Tiguan, there will be a dedicated video on the new Honda Civic. I'm kind of looking forward to driving that and just seeing how that handles. I don't know, could be interesting. It's a pretty sharp looking car. I think it could work out. Well, we'll see. I don't know. There will be a dedicated video on the TT once I do the timing on it, and the dedicated videos on both of the speed triples. So all of that is to come, but until any of those projects are finished, I can make a full video on them. So you're just gonna have to wait till then. That is all I have for you today because we gotta get back to work. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.